For those of you just joining us, welcome to Mailgun Dyspatch, helping developers and marketers find middle ground on transactional email. Let's get started. I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Matt Harris is the co-founder and CEO at Dyspatch, and he has extensive email and product expertise. We're very pleased to also be joined today by two special guests from our partner Mailgun. We have sales engineer Michael Kane and product marketing specialist Elena Aguirre-Gide. Mike helps drive sales by acting as a liaison between customers and developers so that customer wants and needs are realized in Mailgun's products. In her role as product marketing specialist, Elena shares the value of Mailgun's deliverability suite with new and existing customers through customer communications. I'd like to turn it over to Michael to start our discussion.
Yeah, let's get started. In the email automation world, we very broadly speak about two very high-level categories of email. The first one is transactional email. The second category that we categorize emails in is marketing email. Today, we're just going to talk about transactional email. And transactional email is typically composed of highly personalized, event-based, trigger-based emails. So these are your order confirmations. These are your abandoned cart notifications. This is the notification that your credit card was just used in Argentina. These are very important emails for the individual that it's intended to go to. So we consider these emails to be highly potent. These are the emails that really we consider them to be business critical to our customers, and it's the type of email that we're going to be talking about mostly today.
And they're kind of the happy email too. I mean, I know I get super excited whenever I look at my inbox and I got a notification that says, hey, your order is ready for pickup at the Amazon locker. I'm like, heck yes, I really was waiting for my coat hangers. Great.
Right.
I get real happy.
I know, same. Is it because they're the felt hangers? Did you switch to felt?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. I'm felt only now.
One of the other components of transactional emails that you typically send these to customers as they're actually engaging, like they perform some action in your app or on your website. The most engaged the customer is going to be that they just gave you money, and so you want to reward a customer who's just purchased with you. You don't want to kind of do them into service. And transactional email is it's that moment right after the purchase. You have a great opportunity to send them something awesome or give them a great experience.
Yeah, that's a great example how once you've got them in, they've just started working with you. You want to create that really great initial customer experience that is going to follow them all the way through how long they're going to be doing business with you. So definitely you've touched on a good point around onboarding, how even on the transactional side of that, you're expecting some kind of indication that, hey, this is how you're going to get started with us. These are all the resources available to you. This is how you can make the most out of our product. So that's a really good point that you bring up. And so we know that it's incredibly valuable. It's something that customers are expecting to have as part of their experience with you. And no one will argue against how important transactional email can be. But the truth of the matter is there's a lot on our plate most of the time. So when you're working with development teams and marketing teams, we're all wearing multiple hats. And just to give you an example, internally, if you're working with a small team, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to be working on. So maybe HTML is just one part of the work that you're going to be doing together. There's also product development that's super important to help keep your product roadmap on track. A lot of the work on the front end piece to make your product incredibly usable, especially in SaaS, that's super important. And the user experience as well. If it's just not there, your customers are not going to adopt your product. So all of those things are also really, really important. And marketers are also focusing on other things on their plate, like lead nurturing. What are you going to do with potential customers that are evaluating you right now? And how do you get them to turn into happy customers? There's the content creation piece. What are you going to give people for them to start evaluating you and deciding, is Mailgun the right fit for me? Events, going out and practically finding these people that are a good fit and they just don't know it yet. So there's a lot that marketers and developers are working on all the time. And so it might just seem that, hey, trying to figure out how to get our transactional email to create that right experience or to work the way that it should just might seem to be kind of one more thing you're putting on everyone's plate. So sometimes that can lead to friction. And depending on which team has a greater sense of urgency to get this up and going, there's a lot of stuff that we definitely have to figure out when it comes to transactional email. And not only that, it might seem like they're even competing priorities, but we'll get into a little bit more of that and how sometimes if you perceive that, okay, I don't have the bandwidth to do it, and you're trying to problem solve by bringing in a third party or maybe bringing in like a marketing agency to help you code and create the look and feel of your email, it can lead to problems, especially when someone else is coding, and it can get a little bit messy.
That's right. Yeah. You and I know in our own organization that, different organizational units of our business participate in the construction and the curation of our transactional emails, right? So product management might have their own transactional email. Billing might have their own transactional email that they're sending out to customers. Legal could have their own transactional that a contract is about to expire and, we need to start negotiations again. For that reason, it seems like there can be different or multiple personalities, if you will, in the code. I've seen personalities in code.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not my area of expertise, making something responsive and making sure that there's tracking and approvals and all that has to happen on the back end. Definitely not my strength, but that's why I like to partner with you and everyone else that can help me out, because I want to focus on what I'm good at. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely where you guys helping me out is super, super useful. And I mean, also just the reality of how a business evolves. So your messaging, especially if within your organization is owned by product marketing or a combination of product and marketing, there's a lot of changes that happen to positioning for your products, how you go to market and how you're talking about your solution and how we can help you out based on your specific needs. That changes. And we know that by industry, by market, region. There's the language component as well. So just because you're based out of the US doesn't mean that your customers may not be in Latin America, where they predominantly speak Spanish and Portuguese, or in Europe where they speak German. So making that customer experience for them reflected within your transactional email is also really important, but you need the flexibility to be able to adapt to your region and your market. And so that's just the reality of when you're executing your strategy. You have to be flexible. And so if you have to wait a long time, or what seems like it would be a long time to have these changes implemented, it can create delays, especially if there are things depending on these changes like product launches, where you need everything to be ready so that you can push go and things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's right. One of the biggest challenges of being in the business of transactional emails and sending them is just getting to the inbox, right? We talked earlier about how I ordered a cake last week, remember?
Can I say I'm super sad that you didn't share? What the heck, Mike?
Well, it was for no particular occasion, and I wanted a cake. And I ordered one, and if I don't get that notification in my inbox that cake's ready, it's gonna melt, and I get no cake, right?
Yeah.
Which is a huge bummer for me.
And for me, because you're not sharing.
No one gets cake. So these are the kinds of emails that we expect to see delivery rates, and that's the rate at which you can reach the inbox of in the 90s, 95 plus. If you're not achieving those kinds of rates, your transactional emails are probably not doing what they're intended to do. So that is one of the focuses of Mailgun's business, and with the help of partners like Dyspatch, you can really make really beautiful, really attractive transactional emails for your purposes.
Yeah, I just want to highlight there, Michael, is that because of the sensitivity of these emails and the necessary high deliverability rate, like your order receipt, that almost has to get into the customer's inbox. Some companies view transactional email, therefore, as very set it and forget it, and they don't want to focus on having them be a great experience or look really good because they're scared of that change. But I just want to highlight that there's many great companies out there. I'll point to Airbnb as an example, or Dropbox as another one, where many of their emails are extremely business critical. When you book a vacation rental on Airbnb, that's a big purchase typically, and you're pegging your entire vacation around whether or not you actually have a place to stay. And so getting that receipt is crucial. But Airbnb still takes the time to make that a really great experience, to make that email really awesome, because these emails need that high deliverability rate. That doesn't mean that they should be overlooked or ignored. You can still safely make them a really great email, make them a really good experience, and still see high deliverability. We see some people have some hesitation to let marketing have some input on these emails because of that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to what we had been discussing around competing priorities, where it might look like you're competing or that there's a lack of bandwidth for the teams, but really when it comes down to having that conversation and talking about, okay, we're both batting on the same team, we're both trying to grow and make better business decisions and bring in new customers, tying it back to revenue, I think, is an important piece of that discussion. And so establishing how each team is going to collaborate to define the scope, prioritize work, and track progress, I think, is the first step. So having that conversation around, okay, there's an opportunity for us to really leverage transactional email to help us retain customers, to help us get them to adopt the product, and to guide them through those first few months when they're just getting to know us, they're starting to use our product, and we want it to be sticky. So if you can tie that conversation back to, hey, this is going to bring us more business, this is going to be adding incremental revenue to our customer base, that is definitely a good conversation to have, and I think it might help put you in a position to make a really compelling argument. And also just getting the right people involved from the start. So we've talked a lot about how developers and marketers are working together, but you also have the supporting cast, right? So you might be a small firm and you have one person in your legal department that has to help out everybody cross-functionally. So not just marketing, also maybe procurement or sales, teams that also need approval to make sure that we're saying the right thing, that we're not doing something that we shouldn't. So getting your supporting cast involved from the beginning, everyone that can improve your messaging and everybody that owns the messaging is super important as well, to make sure that you're not going through a lot of back and forth, and so everything is coming as smoothly as possible into fruition.
Mm-hmm. I think especially in the new world of GDPR and everything else, that how privacy is changing, including those tertiary stakeholders like legal is even more important now.
Yeah, and especially because that's a good point you bring up. Transactional and email marketing behave differently. So making sure that you have explicit consent from the person that's receiving your emails is critical before you can even reach them. And transactional email, since it's desired, it's email that somebody's expecting and with a certain sense of urgency, and there's that time component, will help you making sure that you get to them when you need to, and making sure that you obtain that opt-in as well from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so what also really helps kind of expedite that along and making sure that you get your transactional email up and running is making sure that your HTML is in good shape.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about this. So one of the really big problems with transactional email is that it's often owned by engineering, and there's no common place for transactional email to live. And what I mean by that, it's often HTML files trapped in source code, or it's stored in a database owned by some engineering team, or we've even seen examples where the transactional email is stored in Excel files, which sounds insane, but because there's no standard way to do this, everyone kind of invents their own solution, and it leads to really messy HTML. On top of that, building HTML easy email that's responsive and that works in all the different mobile clients, and that the buttons work properly in both Outlook and Gmail is incredibly difficult. Email HTML is incredibly complex. And so this leads to a couple problems, and the biggest one is copy and paste. So someone will build an email one time and it kind of works, and so someone else comes along to build another email, or change an email, and they'll copy and paste some of the code from that first one. And invariably, something will get lost or copied incorrectly or something else. And at the end of the day, you'll have 10 different emails, which all have slight different variations of the same HTML. And colors will be different, or formatting won't work, or something will be broken. And you encounter the same problem if you go engage with an agency to design a new set of emails and have those translated into code. Now you have completely different code and different HTML for different sets of transactional email. There's other things that can compound this as well. If you talk about as you try to add new features, or even going through a simple logo change can take. We've seen examples of upwards of a year to change a logo, because different HTML transactional emails use different logos from different places, and it's no one kind of knows where they all exist and they all live. There's no true ownership. So our recommendation around resolving this problem is to build that ownership, build a common place, have a common place for all of the email to live, and then take the step of thinking about email from a block perspective. And there's an example here on the right of the screen. This is a very simplistic example, but this email is being broken up into kind of like overall like a header, which is a responsive block, and includes the logo as well as a kind of like a high-level menu of different places on the Costco site. Then kind of like a major call to action responsive block, and obviously this looks more like a marketing email, but you can do this with transactional email as well. And then there's a footer there as well, which includes both customer support and success links, legal links to terms and conditions, and then the different social callouts as well. And then finally, all the legalese that Costco is required to send in this email. So if you start thinking about email from a block perspective like this, it's obvious that the header and the footer block, Costco could actually use those in quite a few emails, and that already using 2 blocks in their email reduces the amount of complexity in each of their templates. They could then update the header and have that propagate through all of their emails. And even the call to action responsive block, if they're doing this if it's engineered in a smart way, they could reuse that and just swap out the assets and swap out the content and the links. And so moving to a block-based email world really adds a lot of power. And I think it's one of the true requirements if you want to be leveraging transactional to help accomplish some of those business needs. And I think the really interesting thing here is this can truly bring together marketing and engineering. This makes sense to an engineer. It's a better engineered system. Will help them when they're developing future features and help them interact with transactional email. On the flip side, it provides value to the marketing team, because now anytime they want to make a change a logo, or add something to a transactional email, the amount of work that's required is greatly reduced, and the complexity is greatly reduced. The 2 suggestions here are move to thinking about email in a block-based world. And the second one is start thinking about building some kind of process to have email change, whether it's internal system or external system. Have a production platform that helps your email go through a flow of being changed that includes these blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there with just making it easy on everybody to be agile and be quick about implementing changes. I know, especially on like marketing messaging and how branding evolves all the time. If you have something that's a little more modular, it can really help expedite a lot of the testing that you might want to do. And kind of going back to the example I gave around localization, yeah, let's go ahead and touch on marketing messaging and branding are evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So with the example of localization, there are some things that won't change. Your logo will be the same, your legal terms will be the same, but you might want to test something like subject lines, or you might want to test how certain content performs in terms of click-through. So those are some things that, while just one component of that email is going to change, you don't have to go and rework everything from scratch just to test out those 2 components, or to have 2 different language versions of your transactional email. So it does give you the agility to implement changes a little more quickly, and to also just get some real insights as you go, so that if you see that something's not working in maybe the transaction messages that you are running in Spanish, you can make those tweaks along the way and not have to wait for approvals or for quality control to come in and check that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the deliverability piece that's incredibly important too. Transactional email and marketing email behave incredibly differently. And so this is where I rely a lot on Mike to give me those insights on, okay, how should I be treating my transactional email? And what do I have to do to make sure that every time I send, I'm giving myself the best chance to reach the inbox?
Mm-hmm. One of the sort of best practice that we tell our customers is to try and segment as much as they can the different classification of emails that they're pursuing. So there's a notion here at Mailgun of a sending domain, and that sending domain can be associated with either a shared IP or a dedicated IP. And Mailgun maintains, a large swath of dedicated IPs from which your sending domain can send. And what we see there is we see our customers see really positive results in having the ability to segment and compartmentalize their email. Really, it serves to maintain the reputation of those sending domains and the dedicated IPs with which those domains are associated. So, yeah, we pity the fool that does not consider using separate sending domains for their transactional and their marketing. There are special cases in which you might want to use one domain if maybe you're unifying your brand or unifying your message. But in general, we advise our customers as much as they can to segment into subdomains and maybe even further categorize emails from there. But we definitely want to start with segmenting out transactional from marketing.
At what point do you typically see people add more than 2 subdomains?
Maybe if it's like a geographical demographic that they want to target. If it's just customers, maybe your most loyal customers get one subdomain, and maybe the ones that you're courting or the ones that you're trying to attract might be coming from another domain. It really just depends on it's sort of like each customer has their own fingerprint with us, and they are all unique in their own. They all have little idiosyncrasies of their own.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call me a special snowflake. I'm your customer.
And all of our customers are.
I like the unique fingerprint. That's a great way to say it.
It's true. I mean, it's maybe. I mean, I think you mentioned Airbnb earlier. There's lots of different transactional emails that Airbnb could send you, right? Like it's the day that your rental starts. So send this type of message. It's you've gotten to the residence. Send this type of message.
Mm-hmm.
You've checked out. You need to review the review the Airbnb. You need to let the manager know about a plumbing issue or something. These are all different types of transactional emails of varying importance. So it really just depends on the customer.
Yeah. Is there, one more question for you. Is there a single most common deliverability mistake you see companies make with regards to transactional?
I mean, there are what we consider to be rookie mistakes, if I can use that idiom. But like, if you're, let's say, if your transactional email contains like an embedded image, have you ever gotten one of those emails where it's just an image?
Yeah.
Super sketchy, right?
Very sketchy.
Right. That's that. I mean, if it's a birthday, if it's Red Robin and they're telling you, I love Red Robin, by the way. Red Robin is not a sponsor of this webinar, by the way. I am not an investor, full disclosure.
But you really just want the onion rings.
Right, but let's say it's your birthday and Red Robin's sending you a coupon code or something. If that email consists of one JPEG, any inbox provider out there is going to say this looks weird. This looks strange.
Mm-hmm.
So, on our website we have lots of other best practices. It's what you might expect. It's things like lots of capital letters, lots of exclamation points. even spelling and grammar mistakes can be picked up by some of these inbox providers that are really savvy. But yeah, I mean, we get to know every single customer that comes to us and what they want to accomplish, and right there in our documentation is are a set of best practices that we advise all customers, no matter what they're sending, transactional marketing or otherwise, to adhere to.
Mm-hmm. I think you just touched on something kind of funny that I've seen before. And one of the difficulties of having transactional email be in source code is that most code editors that engineers use don't actually have spell check. So there can be spelling mistakes in a transactional email, but the programmers that own that email won't know because they don't have spell check. And I've seen examples of that before.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, that sounds terrible. Find the typo, and you're staring at your screen for ages trying to figure it out.
So I think the story here is that you want this collaboration between marketing, product, and all the different other stakeholders in your organization, and you want that collaboration because you're going to provide like a net better experience. You're going to provide better deliverability if you don't have those typos in your emails. You can provide a better customer experience if your email has a clear call to action. That you want to create that environment of collaboration and align those different teams of product, of engineering and marketing, align them around the same goals, whether it's revenue or something else. Because then you can then work together to achieve that goal, as opposed to being in contention and having a lot of friction. And these great email experiences are really important because they do drive revenue. You can look at, this is a great example from Waze when you're getting started with them this email clearly conveys how to get started with Waze and the 3 steps required. And you can tell that a lot of time and energy and love went into building this email and making it really great. And that required a lot of collaboration between those different teams. And so this is the end product you want, is getting that level of collaboration. That's why we think it's so important. Mike, let's talk a little bit about how Dispatch and Mailgun work together. I think what's key here is what I love is Mailgun is the deliverability engine built by developers for developers, and Dispatch is the email production platform built so that developers wouldn't have to build email anymore. Their marketing team could help work on and build transactional email. And so this is really like the match made in heaven of servicing the needs of the marketing team and your engineering team, such that you can have that collaborative environment. So how does it all work together? We manage email templates in a block-based system, and when when you go to send an email, your customer triggers it based on they do a purchase, or they sign up and you're going to send a welcome email. Your system will pull an email from the latest version of that template from Dispatch. Something that's been approved has gone through an approval process. And then on the customer side, you'll merge that template with all of the pertinent customer data. Things like their first name or last name and all of the order information, anything else. And then that the ready to send email gets passed off to Mailgun, and that's where Mike takes off.
Yeah, no, that's I think just like you guys, we have fully REST-based API. So in whatever framework your developers are comfortable, as long as that language can make HTTP requests, it's something. This is all a process. Steps 1 through 4 that can all be automated through REST-based APIs. So. And then, if we had a 5-step 5, 6, 7 on this slide, Mailgun also provides APIs to track the events that particular email is going through in its life cycle. Like, was it delivered? Was it failed? Did it bounce? Did someone complain? All these events that you expect to see out of an email. We do advise that, especially for transactional emails, to make use of our full suite of APIs, especially our events API, to make sure that that message got to its destination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really key thing to consider. Like, maybe highlight the difference between just like a straight like SMTP service and like a really full-fledged service like Mailgun. Is that an email send doesn't stop when you press send or when that gets sent out. There's like up to 10 other events that could happen with that email that are really important that your product needs to know about. If that email bounced, that's really important because maybe that customer is having issues with their account in other places. If that email gets delivered and opened on, like maybe your customer support team needs to know that they're opening a very important email and they may need to engage with that customer. There's lots of other ways and other functions within your organization that might need to know about that. And Mailgun gives you the opportunity to ingest that and provide a richer experience. So it's really important. Yeah, I think this is our final slide, just showing off a bit of dispatch and just showing kind of using blocks and building email. And I think this is the kind of like this is the end goal of what every organization should want to get to, is a world where marketing can iterate and change and work on transactional email in a controlled environment that engineering trusts, and on the back end trust a service like Mailgun for deliverability. I think what's really fun about this animation we're showing is it's building a payment receipt for PayPal, and while the information looks static, like the order information and everything else, behind the scenes is actually all dynamic information. So if this email is actually sent, it would get personalized specific to the recipient and everything else, which is really great. But yeah, I think that's our last slide. Let's move to any questions.
We're going to kick it off with Matt. I know there was a slide about this, but if you could further clarify a bit. The question reads, I don't quite understand how Dispatch integrates with Mailgun. How do I connect the two?
Yeah, that's definitely a great question. So especially if you're using Mailgun today, you have templates that live somewhere. How you connect it to is in your system where you're calling Mailgun. You'd essentially add an API call to Dispatch first to fetch the template from Dispatch. And you'll do that, what we call the render step, where you take the template and you merge in all the customer data, and then you pass it on to Mailgun. And so we typically see the integration happening right in code, like right alongside where you're calling Mailgun. It's extremely simple, and typically this reduces a lot of the complexity in the code because all of the work of building and managing templates is now completely removed and replaced with like a one-line API call.
Great.
Ooh.
We just got an incoming question. Is there a free trial of Dispatch?
We definitely do pilots and do personalized demos. So something we're willing to discuss and investigate with anyone. It is a complex system of building a set of the blocks. We like to be pretty hands-on. Just like Mailgun, each of our customers has a special fingerprint.
Great. I got another one here. I'm going to toss it out to Mike, our wonderful sales engineer. What would I need to keep in mind when integrating a front end to my current email delivery service?
Front end on your current email deliverability service. It depends, I guess, if you are what role you're playing here. But let's say you're the role of the developer, right? Because you're developing the front end. What I would do is I would make use of, like I said earlier, all of our events-based APIs, so that you can report right there in that front end interface what's going on with a particular message, and we drill down to the most discrete level of events for any particular message, and some of our customers send out dozens of millions of messages a month. And we can provide events on every single one of them. What I would also advise is, if we have a product available called validation, and what this allows is it allows or permits for a developer to take in an email address and make sure that it's syntactically correct, that it's that it's an actual inbox, that it's not a disposable address like a Mailinator or a Yacht Mail like these ones out there, and make sure that it's an actual valid address, because you definitely want to make sure that those messages that you're sending from that front end or with that front end get to that particular inbox.
Great. Okay. I'm going to throw the next one to Matt. This person loves the idea of A/B testing, especially the transactional emails. Can you talk about how that would work if using Mailgun and Dispatch?
Yeah, we've seen customers do this in a couple different ways. The most simplistic way is customers just set up a couple different variants of the email within Dispatch. You can create multiple drafts of any template and have different subject lines. But the more advanced and more common, honestly, scenario we see is creating, again, multiple drafts of a template, and then integrating that with an advanced testing suite like Optimizely X or something like that, where you're not just testing, do I get a better open rate on this email, but does the subject line or does this call to action actually drive higher downstream conversions or revenue? And I think, again, when we talked about like how to bring marketers and engineers together on this problem of transactional email, a big component of that is aligning them on goals and on values. And so aligning around revenue really, really helps. And doing the same for A/B testing is really important as well.
All right. We haven't heard from Elena. I'm gonna throw this one at you, Elena.
I'm ready.
All right. I don't really send a lot of emails. Do you think I can send my transactional messages along with my email marketing messages? And then there's the second part. Do I have to have them separated by domain?
I would actually answer that with a question of my own. I would ask you, how important is deliverability to you? And how critical is it to your marketing and demand generation efforts? And I say this because transactional email and email marketing practices, they generate very different results. So if you have been using the same domain to send all of your emails, it's a little difficult in that sense to measure the impact that you're going to have on your reputation and your deliverability. Best practice, and what I've learned just working with our deliverability team, is that you do want to separate the two. Doesn't mean you have to have a completely new domain, because of course you want that brand equity and your brand reputation to be across all of your digital properties. But if you do have a separate subdomain, it lets you monitor and track your progress towards better sending, better inboxing. And so it is worthwhile to have the two separate, because they do behave differently. And, you know, like I've put my foot in it a few times just with my own email that I send out to customers, where I've tried to send using the same domain, and it just hasn't really worked out well for me in terms of inboxing, open, and click-through rates. So it is definitely important to separate the two, because it is a very different experience based on what you're promising to deliver to this person as soon as they open your message. So it is definitely worthwhile to separate the two and have a separate subdomain from which you're going to be sending those new emails that you're introducing to your sending pool.
Great. Okay, I think we've got enough time to wrap up with one more question.
Yeah, I actually had a question I wanted to flip back to Mike and Elena. I've seen, obviously, setting up multiple domains for transactional and marketing is really common. As you said, Elena, that's definitely recommended. I'm curious if you have any recommendations around the from name and the from address you use as well. If you see any impact from using always the same from name and from address for all your transactional, or if there's benefits to changing it up.
It's good to try and not change that too much, especially if you're trying to create trust with your customers. So if they are used to seeing your transactional emails come from the same address or the same person, they're going to be more inclined to open them. And also the way that your ISP is going to deliver them will depend a lot on that trust. So I wouldn't play too much with the sending from address, just because you are trying to build credibility and establish trust.
Right. We advise as much as possible to make the from address match the sending domain as much as possible. But there are kind of cool instances in which sometimes some instances in some transactional emails you might want the customer to reply back to that transactional email.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of require that you have some sort of programming or logic on your side to handle that reply. But what Mailgun has on our side is something called routes. And a route basically, Matt, you talked about the from address, right? But there's also one more parameter when you're sending out, which is the reply to address.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll have the reply to address be part of one of your routes at Mailgun, which is an API method and one of our offerings here to do some sort of programmatic action on that response. So, you just like Elena said, you definitely want to keep the from address as close as possible to the sending domain. You'll get better treatment from the inbox providers if you do that, but you might get a little clever with the reply to address so that if there's interaction in that direction from customer to business, you can handle that response.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And you don't see the reply to as being like something to be concerned about from a deliverability standpoint?
It does. I mean, no, it's not as impactful, I guess, as the from address and the sending domain.
Gotcha. Interesting. Thanks for answering that one.
Mm.
Great. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up right there. I want to thank our fantastic partners at Mailgun for joining us today and their great answers. And thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great.
Enjoy your cake, Mike and Elena.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy sending.
Bye.
Email,
Bye-bye.
your template. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Toodles.